The space station hung in the darkness between two worlds. It was called Unity Station, a name that spoke of hope and peace. Inside the metal corridors, Sergeant Daniel Hayes checked his rifle for the third time that hour. He was nervous, though he would never admit it out loud. Today was supposed to change everything between humans and the Zavari Empire. Daniel stood with 5 other soldiers in the docking bay. They wore their best combat armor, polished until it gleamed under the bright lights. Ambassador Helen Carter stood at the front of the group, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked calm, but Daniel noticed her hands clasped tightly together. Everyone was tense. The Zavari were coming. After months of careful messages sent across the stars, both sides had agreed to meet. The Zavari controlled dozens of planets and had weapons that could crack worlds in half. Humans were new to this part of space, and they needed allies, not enemies. But nobody knew if the Zavari wanted peace or if they just wanted to study humans before crushing them. A loud clang echoed through the station. The Zavari ship had docked. Daniel's grip tightened on his weapon. The doors hissed open and cold air rushed into the bay. Then they appeared. The Zavari were tall, easily 7 feet, with scales that shimmered like dark emeralds. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed wrong for creatures so large. Their eyes were golden and cold. Each one wore armor that looked like it had been grown rather than built, all curves and sharp edges. Daniel counted 12 of them, all warriors by the look of it. In the center walked someone different. She was taller than the rest, and her scales were deeper green, almost black. Jewels decorated her armor, and she wore a crown of twisted metal that looked like frozen flames. Queen Sekera. Daniel had seen her picture in the briefings, but seeing her in person was different. She radiated power and danger. Ambassador Carter stepped forward. "Welcome to Unity Station, Your Majesty. We are honored by your presence." The Queen's translator device crackled to life. Her voice was deep and smooth. "We acknowledge your greeting, Ambassador. Let us proceed to the negotiations. My time is valuable." The two groups moved through the station toward the conference room. Daniel and his team followed at a respectful distance. He watched the Zavari warriors. They moved like predators, always alert, always ready, just like him. The conference room was large and carefully designed to be neutral. Human chairs on one side, Zavari sitting platforms on the other. A round table in the middle made from clear crystal. Daniel and his team took positions along the walls while the diplomats sat down. For 2 hours they talked. Ambassador Carter spoke of trade agreements and shared technology. Queen Sekera listened and responded with careful words that promised nothing. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Daniel found himself watching the Queen. She never smiled, never showed any emotion except cold interest. It was like watching a statue speak. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Alarms screamed through the station. Daniel's combat instincts took over. He moved to the ambassador, putting himself between her and any threat. The other soldiers did the same. "What is happening?" Queen Sekera demanded, rising from her seat. An explosion rocked the station. Daniel was thrown against the wall. His helmet's display showed multiple breaches in the station's hull. Gunfire echoed from somewhere close. His radio crackled with panicked voices. "All units, we are under attack. Zavari forces boarding from unauthorized ships." Daniel looked at Queen Sekera's guards. They looked just as surprised as the humans. This wasn't supposed to happen. Then he understood. Not all the Zavari wanted peace. "We need to get you both to the escape pods." Daniel shouted at the ambassador. More explosions. The conference room door blasted open. Zavari soldiers poured in, but these wore different armor, marked with red symbols. They opened fire immediately. Daniel returned fire, his rifle barking in the confined space. One of the attackers went down, then another. Ambassador Carter screamed. One of Daniel's teammates, Corporal Jake Martinez, fell with a smoking hole in his chest. The battle became chaos. Smoke filled the room. Daniel grabbed the ambassador and pulled her toward a side exit. He could hear Queen Sekera's guards fighting desperately behind him. They ran through the corridors. The station was falling apart. Fires burned everywhere. Bodies lay scattered, both human and Zavari. Daniel's radio was nothing but static and screaming. He had lost contact with his unit. He had to get the ambassador to safety. They reached a junction and Daniel checked both directions. Clear left, blocked right. They went left. The ambassador was crying now, mumbling prayers under her breath. Daniel kept moving, his training pushing away the fear. Another explosion, this one close. The floor buckled beneath them. Daniel felt himself falling, then slamming into something hard. Pain shot through his side. He looked up and saw the ambassador sprawled against a wall, not moving. Blood ran from her head. No, 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 Daniel crawled to her, checking for a pulse. Nothing, she was gone. Gunfire erupted nearby. Daniel looked up and saw 3 of the rebel Zavari soldiers coming down the corridor. He raised his rifle, but his arm wasn't working right. Something was broken. He tried to stand, tried to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. This was it. He was going to die in this broken hallway so far from home. Then he heard something, a roar that shook the walls. One of the rebel soldiers turned and was cut down by a blast of energy. The other 2 spun around, raising their weapons. Queen Sakara appeared from a side passage, moving like liquid death. Her personal energy blade cut through one soldier's armor like it was paper. The third got off a shot that hit her in the shoulder, but she didn't stop. She grabbed him by the throat and slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack his armor. The rebel soldier dropped. The queen stood over the bodies, breathing hard. Green blood ran down her arm from the wound. She turned and saw Daniel on the floor. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. Then the queen walked toward him. Daniel tried to raise his rifle, but she was too fast. She knocked it aside and stood over him. He waited for the killing blow. It didn't come. Queen Sakara looked down at him, then at the ambassador's body. Something changed in her golden eyes. "You tried to save her," she said. "My job," Daniel managed to say through the pain. The queen tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle. Then the station shook again, and part of the ceiling collapsed. The queen moved fast, covering Daniel with her armored body as debris rained down. When it stopped, she pulled back, and Daniel saw blood on her face now too. "Why?" Daniel asked. "Why help me?" "You are not my enemy," she said. "They are." She gestured at the rebel soldiers. "Those who want this war. Who attacked my ship as I docked. Who seek to kill me for desiring peace." More voices echoed down the corridor. The rebels were getting closer. Queen Sakara looked around, then at Daniel. "Can you move?" Daniel tried. His legs worked barely. "Maybe. Then we must go now." She pulled him to his feet. His broken arm hung useless, but he could walk if she supported him. They moved through the dying station together. An alien queen and a human soldier, both wounded, both hunted. They found an escape pod bay. Most of the pods were already gone or destroyed. One remained, but it was damaged. Sparks flew from its control panel, and the hull had a long crack running down one side. "It might not make it," Daniel said. "It is all we have," the queen replied. They climbed inside. The pod was small, designed for 2 humans. With the queen's size, they barely fit. Daniel collapsed into one seat while the queen worked the controls. His vision was starting to blur. He had lost blood, maybe too much. The pod launched, slamming them both back into their seats. Through the small window, Daniel watched Unity Station break apart, torn by explosions and fire. All those people. All that hope. Gone. The pod's engine sputtered. Warning lights flashed across the panel. The queen hissed in frustration, her clawed hands moving across controls designed for human fingers. "The navigation is damaged. I cannot set a proper course. Where can we go?" Daniel asked. "There is a moon nearby, uninhabited, barely habitable. But it is close, and this vessel will not last long enough to reach anywhere better." "Then that's where we go," Daniel said. The queen entered the coordinates. The pod lurched forward, picking up speed. Daniel watched her work. She was wounded, bleeding, her royal armor cracked and dented, but her hands were steady. She did not panic. "Your name," she said suddenly. "What is it, Daniel?" "Daniel Hayes." "Daniel Hayes," she repeated, testing the sounds. "I am Sakara. You may use my name. There is no need for titles here." "Okay, Sakara." She nodded once, then turned back to the controls. The pod shook as it entered the moon's atmosphere. Daniel closed his eyes. He had failed his mission. The ambassador was dead. His team was probably dead. And now he was falling toward an unknown world with an alien queen who might decide to kill him once they landed. But somehow he didn't think she would. Something had changed in that moment when she covered him from the falling debris, something neither of them understood yet. The pod hit the ground hard, bouncing twice before sliding to a stop. Daniel's head cracked against the side panel and darkness took him. His last thought was hoping he would wake up again. Daniel woke to pain and cold. Every part of his body hurt, but his left arm screamed the loudest. He opened his eyes slowly, and for a moment he couldn't remember where he was. Then it all came back. The attack, the station, the crash. He was lying on hard ground. Above him stretched a purple sky with two small suns hanging low on the horizon. The air smelled strange, like metal and something sweet he couldn't name. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. His ribs felt like broken glass grinding together. "Do not move quickly," a deep voice said. Daniel turned his head. Queen Sakara sat nearby, her back against a large rock. She looked worse than he felt. Her armor was cracked in a dozen places. Green blood had dried on her shoulder and face. One of her eyes was swollen shut. But she was alive and watching him carefully. "How long was I out?" Daniel asked. "Several hours. It is almost night here." Daniel looked around. They were in a rocky area with strange purple plants growing between the stones. In the distance, he could see mountains with sharp peaks. The escape pod lay about 50 feet away, smoking and broken. "It would never fly again. Your arm is broken," Sakara said. "I said it while you were unconscious. It will heal, but you must not use it." Daniel looked down. Someone had torn strips from his uniform and fashioned a crude sling. His arm was bound tightly to his chest. "You did this?" "You were injured saving lives. It would be dishonorable to let you suffer when I could help." Daniel wasn't sure how to respond to that. He struggled to his feet using his good arm. The world spun for a moment, then settled. "Do you know where we are?" "The moon is called Varus. It orbits a gas giant in this system. The atmosphere is breathable for both our species, but thin. We will tire easily. The temperature will drop severely at night." Sakara stood as well, moving stiffly. "I explored while you slept. There are cave systems nearby. We should take shelter there. What about rescue?" Sakara's face darkened. "The pod's communications were destroyed in the crash. We cannot call for help. Even if we could, I do not know who would answer. Those rebels had ships. They may still be in the system searching for survivors to kill." Daniel felt his chest tighten. They were alone, stranded, and nobody knew where they were. "Okay, caves sound good. Do we have any supplies?" "Some. I pulled what I could from the pod. Food, water, medical supplies. Enough for perhaps 10 days if we are careful." 10 days. Daniel hoped rescue would come before then. He had to hope, because the alternative was dying on this empty rock with an alien queen. They gathered what little remained. Daniel's rifle was gone, lost somewhere during the crash. Sakara's energy blade still worked, strapped to her hip. They had 3 emergency ration packs, 2 water containers, and a basic medical kit. It wasn't much. The walk to the caves took an hour. Daniel's legs felt like rubber, and he had to stop several times to catch his breath. The thin air made everything harder. Sakara moved ahead of him, scanning for threats. Despite her injuries, she moved with purpose and strength. The caves were dark and smelled of damp earth. Sakara activated a light strip from the pod, and the pale glow pushed back the shadows. They found a chamber deep enough to be protected from the wind, but close enough to the entrance that they wouldn't be trapped. Night fell quickly on this moon. The temperature dropped fast. Daniel could see his breath in the air. He tried not to shiver, but his body had other ideas. Sakara noticed. "You are cold. I'll manage." "That is foolish. You will die of exposure." She moved closer and sat beside him. Her body radiated heat like a furnace. Zavari body temperature is higher than humans. "I can share warmth." Daniel wanted to argue, but his pride wasn't worth freezing to death. He moved closer. The heat from her body was incredible. Within minutes, he stopped shivering. They sat in silence for a long time. Daniel's mind raced with questions. Who were those rebels? Why did they attack? How many people died on that station? Was anyone looking for them? "You think loudly," Sakara said. "Sorry. Just trying to understand what happened. A faction within my military opposes peace with humanity. They believe your species is weak and will infect the Empire with softness. They orchestrated the attack to kill both of us and blame humanity for my death. This would give them the war they desire." "But you wanted peace?" Sakara was quiet for a moment. "I want what is best for my people. The Empire is strong, but we face enemies on many fronts. An alliance with humanity could be valuable. Your species has shown remarkable adaptability. You went from primitive vessels to faster-than-light travel in less than 100 years. That is impressive." "We're good at learning," Daniel said, "especially when we have to." "Yes. The Zavari respect strength, and adaptation is a form of strength. But many of my commanders only see your small bodies and limited technology. They do not understand that strength comes in many forms. Daniel thought about that. Is that why you saved me? Because you respect strength? I saved you because it was the right action. You fought to protect your ambassador even when wounded. You showed honor. The rebels showed none. The choice was simple. Daniel almost laughed. Nothing about this situation was simple. He was sitting in a cave on an alien moon, sharing body heat with a species he had only met hours ago. His arm was broken, his career was probably over, and he might die here. But somehow sitting next to this alien queen, he didn't feel afraid. We should sleep, Sakara said. Tomorrow we must find water. The containers will not last. You should rest first. I'll keep watch. You can barely stand. I will watch. Sleep, Daniel Hayes. Daniel wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at him like weights. His eyes closed, and he was asleep before he could protest further. He woke once during the night. The cave was completely dark except for Sakara's golden eyes, reflecting the dim starlight from the entrance. She sat perfectly still, watching the darkness like a statue. A guardian. Daniel went back to sleep, feeling strangely safe. Morning came with thin sunlight. Daniel's body ached everywhere, but the pain in his arm had dulled to a steady throb. He could move a little better. Sakara was already awake, checking their supplies. We have one full water container and half of another, she said. I heard running water during the night. There may be a stream nearby. They ate a small portion of rations. The food was bland but filling. Daniel noticed Sakara grimace as she swallowed. Not good? He asked. Human food is too soft, too sweet, but it provides energy. They set out to find water. The landscape looked different in daylight. The purple plants were everywhere, and small creatures scurried between the rocks. They looked like a cross between lizards and rabbits with long ears and scaled bodies. They didn't seem dangerous. The stream was about a mile from the cave, cutting through a small valley. The water was clear and cold. Sakara tested it first with a small device from the medical kit. Safe for both our species. We can drink it. They filled the containers and drank deeply. The water tasted clean and slightly mineral. Daniel felt better immediately. They sat by the stream, resting. Tell me about your world, Sakara said suddenly. Daniel was surprised by the question. Earth, what do you want to know? Everything. I have read reports, but reports are dry. I want to know what it is like to live there. So Daniel told her. He described oceans that stretched forever. Mountains taller than this moon's peaks. Forests so thick you could walk for days and never see the sky. He told her about cities that glowed at night, about millions of people living together. He told her about his home in Ohio, about cold winters and hot summers, about his family. I have a younger brother, Kyle. He's 17, wants to join the military like me, but my mom is terrified. She's already scared enough with me out here. Daniel smiled, remembering. My dad builds houses. He always wanted me to work with him, but I wanted to see the stars. And now you have, Sakara said. Yeah, just not how I imagined. Sakara was quiet for a moment. I have no siblings. I was hatched in the royal clutch. From the moment I broke from my egg, I was alone. Queens do not have families. We have subjects, advisors, guards, but no family. There was something in her voice, a sadness that surprised Daniel. That sounds lonely. It is the way of things. A queen must be separate from her people. How can you rule if you care too much? Maybe caring is what makes you a good ruler, Daniel said. Sakara looked at him with her golden eyes. That is not the Zavari way. Emotion is weakness. Attachment is vulnerability. We are taught this from hatching. Do you believe that? The question hung in the air between them. Sakara stared at the water, watching it flow over the rocks. I do not know anymore. I believed it for 32 years. It made sense. But then you covered the ambassador with your body, even though you knew you might die. That was emotion. That was attachment. And it was not weak. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. They sat by the stream as the suns climbed higher. Two beings from different worlds, learning that maybe they weren't so different after all. Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. They would wake at sunrise, check the supplies, gather water from the stream. Daniel's arm was healing, though it still hurt. Sakara's wounds were closing, her body healing faster than a human's would. They talked. Daniel learned that Sakara had been queen for 20 years. She had won 37 battles. She had never lost a single combat. The rebel ship didn't land immediately. It circled overhead for hours, scanning the surface. Daniel and Sakara stayed hidden in the deeper parts of the cave system. moving quietly through the darkness. They could hear the ship's engines rumbling like distant thunder. "Why don't they just land and search?" Daniel whispered. "They are being thorough, scanning for life signs, checking the wreckage for clues. They want to be certain before committing forces." Sekara's voice was calm in the dark. "It is what I would do." They had moved their supplies deeper into the caves, along with anything from the pod that might be useful. The energy blade rested on Sakara's hip. Daniel had fashioned a crude spear from a piece of the pod's frame. It wasn't much, but it was better than his bare hands. Hours passed. The ship's engines grew quieter, then stopped. Daniel's heart pounded. They had landed. "Now we wait," Sakara said. "They will search the pod first, then expand outward. It will take time." "How much time?" "Enough to prepare. Come. There is something we must discuss." They moved to a small chamber where a crack in the ceiling let in thin light. Sakara sat down heavily, and Daniel saw her wince. Her wounds were not healing as quickly as she had claimed. "You're hurt worse than you said," Daniel observed. "It is nothing." "It's not nothing. Let me look." Sakara hesitated, then nodded. She removed a section of her cracked armor. Underneath, her scales were torn, and the wound on her shoulder had become infected. Green fluid oozed from the edges. "Damn," Daniel muttered. He opened the medical kit and pulled out antiseptic and bandages. "This is going to hurt. I have survived worse." Daniel cleaned the wound as gently as he could. Sakara's muscles tensed, but she made no sound. He applied antiseptic and wrapped it carefully. The medical supplies were running low. This was the last of the bandages. "Why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" Daniel asked. "You had your own injuries. We both needed to remain functional. Complaining serves no purpose. It's not complaining to say you're hurt. It's just being honest." Sakara looked at him with those golden eyes. "In my culture, showing weakness invites challenge. A wounded queen can be overthrown. It is instinct to hide injury. I'm not going to challenge you. I'm trying to help you. I know. It is strange for me. This trust." She paused. "I have never relied on another being before. Not truly. It is uncomfortable." Daniel sat back, studying her. "Is it really that lonely? Being queen? Lonely?" Sakara considered the word. "I do not know if I have felt loneliness. How can you miss what you have never had? I was raised in isolation, trained alone, educated by instructors who kept careful distance. When I took the throne, I was surrounded by thousands of subjects, yet I remained alone. It was not lonely. It was simply existence. But now I see there could be another way. Sitting here with you, talking freely, sharing warmth and food and stories. This is different. And yes, perhaps my previous existence was lonely. I simply had nothing to compare it to." They sat in silence for a moment. Above them they could hear sounds, footsteps, voices speaking in the Zavari language. The rebels were close. "They are searching the area near the pod," Sakara translated quietly. "They found our tracks. They know we survived. How many? From the voices I count 6. Possibly more still on the ship. 6 trained Zavari warriors against 1 wounded queen and 1 human with a broken arm. The math wasn't good." "There is something you must understand," Sakara said quietly. "If they capture me, they will not kill me immediately. They will take me back to the Empire, put me on trial for weakness, for bringing shame to the crown. It will be a spectacle. But you they will kill without hesitation. Then we don't let them capture either of us. Daniel, you must listen. If it comes to a choice, if you can escape while they focus on me, you must run. The ship will have an emergency beacon. You can call for help, return to your people. I'm not leaving you." "That is foolish sentiment." "Maybe. But you didn't leave me on that station. You didn't leave me when I was unconscious." "I'm not leaving you now." Sakara stared at him. "Why? I am not your queen." "Not your responsibility. We barely know each other. I know enough. I know you're trying to bring peace. I know you saved my life. I know that you're a good person, even if your culture doesn't let you show it." "That's enough?" Something changed in Sakara's expression. Her eyes glistened, and for a moment Daniel thought she might cry. But she blinked hard and turned away. "Your species is very strange," she said, her voice rough. "We get that a lot." The voices grew louder. They were entering the cave system. Sakara stood, drawing her energy blade. The weapon hummed to life, glowing with blue light. Daniel gripped his makeshift spear. "Stay behind me," Sakara ordered. "We fight together." She looked like she wanted to argue, but footsteps echoed nearby. They moved deeper into the caves, trying to gain distance. But the rebels were systematic, checking every chamber, every passage. There was nowhere left to run. They found a narrow passage that opened into a larger cavern. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like teeth. It was defensible but also a trap. If the rebels found them here, there would be no escape. "This is where we make our stand," Sakara said. They didn't have to wait long. 3 Xivari warriors entered the cavern, their armor gleaming in the light from their helmet lamps. They saw Sakara and stopped. "Your Majesty," one of them said mockingly, "we have searched so hard for you. Come peacefully and the human dies quickly." "I will come nowhere with traitors and cowards," Sakara replied coldly. "You have fallen far, great queen, living in caves with a human pet. The Empire will hear of your disgrace. The Empire will hear of your rebellion and your cowardice, attacking during peace talks, killing unarmed diplomats. You bring shame to all Xivari," the warrior hissed. "We bring strength. You bring weakness. Your desire for peace with these soft creatures has corrupted you, but it ends today." They attacked together, moving fast. Sakara met them head-on, her blade flashing. She was magnificent, even wounded. She moved like water, like lightning, her blade cutting through armor and scales. One warrior fell, then another staggered back with a deep wound across his chest. But the third got past her guard and slammed into her wounded shoulder. Sakara cried out, a sound of pure pain. She fell to one knee. The warrior raised his blade to finish her. Daniel moved without thinking. He charged forward, driving his crude spear into the warrior's side. It wasn't enough to penetrate the armor, but it threw off his balance. The killing blow missed Sakara by inches. The warrior spun on Daniel, furious. Daniel saw his death coming. But Sakara's blade came up, catching the warrior across the back of his legs. He fell and she finished him. Silence filled the cavern except for heavy breathing. Sakara remained on her knees, holding her shoulder. Blood ran freely now. The wound had reopened. "Foolish," she gasped. "You could have died. So could you. I am a queen. My life is valuable. Yours is just one soldier." My mom would disagree with that. Despite the pain, despite everything, Sakara laughed. It was a harsh sound, but it was real. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She is. She'd also tell me to help you up." Daniel extended his hand. Sakara looked at it for a long moment, then took it. He pulled her to her feet. They stood together, battered and bloody, but alive. "There will be more," Sakara said. "They will have heard the fighting. Then we keep moving." They stumbled through the caves, trying to put distance between themselves and the bodies. Daniel's arm throbbed, and Sakara was leaving a trail of green blood. They weren't going to last much longer. They found another chamber with multiple exits. Sakara collapsed against a wall, breathing hard. Daniel knelt beside her, checking the wound. "It was bad. Really bad. You need proper medical care," he said. "What I need and what is available are very different things." Daniel tore strips from his uniform, making fresh bandages. He packed the wound as best he could, but they needed real help. The medical kit was empty. They were out of options. "Tell me about Kyle," Sakara said suddenly. "What?" "Your brother. Tell me about him. I wish to think of something other than pain." So Daniel talked. He told her about Kyle's terrible jokes, about how he always tried to beat Daniel at video games and never could, about his dream of becoming a pilot. He talked about family dinners, about arguments over stupid things, about the way Kyle looked up to him even though Daniel never felt he deserved it. "You love him very much," Sakara said. "Yeah. He drives me crazy, but yeah. I wonder what that is like. To have someone who knows you completely, who shares your blood and history, who cares for you simply because you exist. It's pretty great. Also pretty annoying sometimes. I would endure the annoyance to experience the rest." They heard sounds again. More rebels searching, but these footsteps sounded different, heavier. "They brought reinforcements," Sakara said grimly. "They will not make the same mistakes." "How many?" She listened carefully. "Many. Too many." Daniel looked around desperately. There had to be something they could do. Some way to survive. His eyes fell on the energy blade at Sakara's hip. The blade. "Does it have a power cell?" "Yes, why?" "Could we overload it? Make it explode?" Sakara's eyes widened. "Yes, it would create a significant blast. But it would leave us defenseless. If we're smart about where we place it, maybe we can collapse part of the caves, seal them off, or at least slow them down." They stayed by the underground lake for several hours. The glowing water seemed to have some kind of mineral content that helped clean Sakara's wound. Daniel's arm felt stronger, though it still ached when he moved it wrong. They drank the water carefully, and it tasted clean and cold. Above them, they could occasionally hear the muffled sounds of digging. The rebels were trying to break through the collapsed tunnel, but it was slow work. That gave Daniel and Sakara time to think, to plan, to simply rest. "Tell me about Earth's queens," Sakara said as they sat in the eerie light. "We don't really have queens anymore. Not with real power. Some countries have kings and queens, but they're mostly ceremonial. They don't rule like you do. Then who leads? Different ways in different places. My country elects a president. We vote for who we want to lead us." Sakara looked puzzled. "The common people choose their leader? How does anything get decided? The masses know nothing of strategy or governance." "Sometimes we make bad choices," Daniel admitted. "But the idea is that everyone has a voice. Leaders serve the people, not the other way around." "That seems backwards." "Maybe. But it means our leaders can't just do whatever they want. They have to listen, have to earn trust, and if they do a bad job, we can choose someone else." Sakara was quiet for a long time. "In my empire, a bad ruler is removed by assassination. It is considered more efficient than your voting." "Yeah, but that sounds pretty stressful for the ruler." "It is. Every day you wonder if today is the day someone decides you are weak enough to challenge. Every meal might be poisoned. Every advisor might be plotting. It is exhausting. That's horrible. How do you live like that?" "You do not live. You survive. You are always on guard, always alone, always afraid to show any vulnerability because vulnerability is death." Sakara looked at her reflection in the glowing water. "I have been queen for 20 years, and I have never had a single day where I felt safe." Daniel couldn't imagine living like that. "Is that why you wanted peace with humanity? To find allies you could trust?" "Partly, but also because I'm tired. Tired of war. Tired of always being strong. Tired of never being allowed to be anything except a symbol. When I saw your species, saw how you cooperate and adapt despite being divided into hundreds of nations, I wondered if there was another way, a better way. And the rebels hate that. They hate change. They hate weakness. To them, any deviation from tradition is corruption." Sakara's jaw tightened. They would rather see the empire burn than evolve. A sound from above. The digging had stopped. Then voices arguing. Daniel strained to hear, but he couldn't understand the words. Sakara listened carefully. "They found another way around," she translated. "They are coming through a different passage. We have perhaps an hour." They stood up, preparing to move again. But as they turned to leave, Daniel felt dizzy. The world spun and he stumbled. Sakara caught him. "What is wrong?" "I don't know. Just dizzy, but it got worse." Heat spread through Daniel's body. His skin felt like it was burning. He fell to his knees and Sakara lowered him gently to the ground. "The water," she said urgently. "It must affect human biology differently." "You are ill." Daniel tried to speak, but his throat felt swollen. The fever came fast and hard. His vision blurred. He could hear Sakara's voice, but it sounded distant, like he was underwater. Time became strange. He would be awake, then not, then awake again. Fever dreams mixed with reality. He saw his mother's face, his brother's smile. He saw the station exploding again and again. He felt cold, then hot, then cold again. Through it all, he was aware of Sakara. She didn't leave him. She used pieces of her armor to carry water, pressing it against his forehead to cool the fever. She held him when the chills made him shake. She spoke to him in her own language, words he didn't understand, but that sounded comforting anyway. Once, during a moment of clarity, he opened his eyes and saw her face close to his. She looked terrified. "Stay with me, Daniel Hayes," she whispered. "You must stay with me." He tried to tell her he would, but the darkness pulled him down again. More time passed. Hours or days, he couldn't tell. The fever burned through him like fire. In his delirium, he spoke. He called for his mother, apologized for not writing more often. He called for Kyle, told him to stay safe, to not join the military, to live a good life. He talked about Lisa, the girl from his hometown he'd been too scared to tell his feelings to before shipping out. Sakara heard everything. She listened to this human soldier bare his soul in fever dreams, and something inside her broke. She had been taught her entire life that emotions were weakness, that caring was vulnerability, that attachment was dangerous. But sitting here, watching this brave warrior fight for his life after fighting so hard to protect her, she couldn't believe those teachings anymore. She thought about her own life. 32 years of cold isolation, 32 years of never allowing herself to feel, to care, to love. For what? For strength? For power? What good was power if you were too afraid to use it for anything except maintaining itself? Daniel had told her about his brother, about his family, about the people he loved. He had connections, relationships, people who made life worth living. And that didn't make him weak. It made him strong. It gave him something to fight for beyond mere survival. Sakara had nothing. No family, no friends, no one who knew her as anything except a symbol. If she died here, her people would mourn the loss of their queen, but no one would mourn Sakara. No one would remember her favorite food or the sound of her laugh or her fear of the dark when she was young, because no one knew those things. She had never let anyone close enough to learn them, but Daniel knew. In just 1 week, he had seen more of the real Sakara than anyone in her entire life. He had seen her wounded, afraid, uncertain, and he hadn't judged her for it. He had helped her, protected her, trusted her. "Please do not die," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I cannot lose the only friend I have ever had." On the 3rd day of the fever, Daniel's eyes opened. They were clear again. The fever had broken. "Sakura." His voice was weak but lucid. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You returned. I thought I had lost you. Takes more than bad water to kill me." He tried to smile, but even that seemed to tire him. "You were very ill. You spoke of many things." Daniel's cheeks reddened. "What kind of things?" "Your family. A female named Lisa. Many apologies to your mother." "Oh God, I'm sorry you had to hear all that. Do not apologize. It was an honor to hear your true heart." Sakara helped him sit up slowly. "But you are not yet recovered. You must rest more. The rebels? I sealed the other passage 2 days ago. They will find another way eventually, but for now we are safe." 2 days? I was out for 2 days? Yes, and I did not leave you for even a moment. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. Her eyes were tired, her scales dull from stress and exhaustion. She had stayed with him the entire time, sacrificing rest to keep him alive. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You would do the same for me?" "Yeah, I would." They sat together in the glow of the underground lake. Daniel was too weak to move far, and Sakara refused to leave him. They had no food left now, just the water and each other's company. "Tell me about your homeworld," Daniel said. "The real stuff, not the political reports. What's it like?" Sakara thought for a moment. "The capital city is called Drakara. It stands on the edge of a great desert. The royal palace rises from the sand like a mountain of black glass. When the 3 suns set, they paint the desert gold and crimson. It is beautiful. Do you like living there?" "I have never considered whether I like it. It simply is. The palace has 10,000 rooms, but I have lived in only a small section of them. The queen's quarters. They are large and empty and silent. That sounds lonely." "I suppose it is. I have servants, of course, guards, advisors. But they do not speak to me except to answer questions or give reports. At night I sit in rooms designed for entertaining hundreds, and I am alone." "What do you do?" "I read reports, study military strategies, review proposals from the High Council. Sometimes I stand on the balcony and watch the city below. I see my people living their lives, talking, laughing, fighting, loving, and I wonder what that is like." "You've never just gone down there? Walked among them?" "A queen does not walk among common citizens. It would be improper, dangerous. I must remain separate, elevated, untouchable." "But you want to." It wasn't a question. Sakara nodded slowly. "Sometimes, late at night, I imagine what it would be like to walk those streets. To buy food from a vendor, to sit in a cafe and listen to ordinary conversation, to be no one important, just another person living their life. You should do it. When we get back, it is not permitted. You're the queen. Who's going to stop you?" Sakara actually smiled at that. The entire weight of tradition and protocol. Traditions can change. Someone just has to be brave enough to change them. They fell into comfortable silence. Above them, the sounds of digging had stopped again. Either the rebels had given up this passage too, or they were being very quiet. "Daniel," Sakara said after a while, "when you were fevered, you spoke of regrets. Things unsaid, feelings unexpressed. Do not waste your life as I have. When we return, tell Lisa how you feel. Write to your mother more often. Spend time with Kyle. What about you? What will you do when we return?" The warriors surrounded them, but before they could strike, a blast of energy tore through the cavern entrance. One of the rebels fell, armor smoking. Another blast and a second warrior dropped. The remaining rebels spun, confused. Through the smoke and debris, new figures emerged. Sci-Fi warriors, but these wore different insignia. Royal Guard markings. Leading them was a massive warrior with silver scales and scars across his face. Commander Torvin? Sakara's voice was filled with shock and hope. My queen, the silver-scaled warrior said, lowering his weapon. We have searched for you since the station attack. Your signal was lost, but we never stopped looking. The rebel commander backed away, his warriors raising weapons, but they were outnumbered now. Torvin's forces moved with precision, surrounding the rebels with weapons trained. Surrender, Torvin commanded. You have violated every sacred law. Attacked during peace talks. Hunted your own queen. There is no honor here. Only death or chains. The rebel commander looked around, calculating his chances. They weren't good. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. His warriors followed suit. Secure them, Torvin ordered. His warriors moved quickly, disarming the rebels and binding their hands. Torvin approached Sakara and bowed deeply. My queen, I am relieved to find you alive. We feared the worst. His golden eyes moved to Daniel and his expression hardened. And I see you have a human companion. This is Sergeant Daniel Hayes, Sakara said firmly. He saved my life multiple times. He is under my personal protection. Torvin studied Daniel with obvious suspicion, but he nodded. As you command, my queen. We should leave this moon immediately. Your ship awaits in orbit. What of my people? Sakara asked. The Empire? Uncertain. The attack on Unity Station caused chaos. The rebels claimed you were killed by human treachery. They used it to call for war. But the High Council demanded proof before acting. When none came, doubt spread. General Vrax attempted to seize power, claiming temporary leadership was necessary. The Empire teeters on civil war. Sakara's expression grew cold and hard. The Queen was returning. Then we must move quickly. Commander, can you transport us to the homeworld directly? Yes, my queen. The royal flagship is in orbit. We can reach Drakara within 3 days. They moved through the caves toward the surface. Daniel's legs were unsteady, but he kept pace. Sakara stayed close to him, a small gesture that Torvin noticed. The commander's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The rebel ship still sat on the surface near the pod's wreckage. Torvin's forces had disabled it. The royal ship was much larger, sleek, and deadly-looking. It reminded Daniel of a predator frozen mid-strike. Inside, the ship was all sharp angles and dim lighting. The crew moved with military precision, each performing their duties without wasted motion. They stared at Daniel with open curiosity and suspicion. A human on a Sci-Fi warship was unprecedented. A medic examined both Sakara and Daniel. The Sci-Fi physician worked quickly, using advanced technology that sealed wounds and accelerated healing. Daniel felt his broken arm knit back together over the course of an hour. It was painful but effective. The human's biology is surprisingly resilient, the medic reported to Sakara. He should make a full recovery. Good, Sakara replied. See that he has proper quarters and food. My queen, perhaps the holding cells would be more appropriate for the human. Sakara's eyes flashed dangerously. Did I stutter, physician? Proper quarters. He's a guest, not a prisoner. The medic bowed quickly. Of course, my queen. Forgive me. Daniel was given a small cabin near the queen's chambers. It was sparse but clean, with a bed that adjusted to his smaller frame and a food dispenser that could produce human-compatible meals. He cleaned himself properly for the first time in over a week, watching days of dirt and blood wash away. When he emerged, he found Sakara waiting in the corridor. She had bathed as well and wore fresh armor, though much less ornate than her royal gear. She looked more like the warrior he had first met. Walk with me, she said. They moved through the ship's corridors. Crew members saw them and immediately pressed themselves against walls. Heads bowed. No one spoke. No one even breathed loudly. They fear you, Daniel observed quietly. They respect the crown. Fear is part of that respect. Is that what you want? People who are afraid of you? Sakara didn't answer immediately. They reached an observation deck, a large window that showed the stars streaming past. She stood there looking out at the infinite darkness. I do not know what I want anymore, she said finally. Before, the answer would have been simple. I want strength, power, victory. But now those words feel empty. What changed? You changed. Or rather, you showed me that change was possible. She turned to face him. On that moon, I was not a queen. I was simply Sakara. And for the first time in my life, I felt real. You can still be real. Being a queen doesn't mean being a statue. My people expect a statue. They need a statue, someone perfect and untouchable to follow. Your people need a leader they can actually relate to, someone who understands them because she's willing to be human. Daniel paused. Well, you know what I mean. Sakara smiled slightly. I know what you mean. But implementing such change will not be easy. The High Council, the military commanders, the noble houses, they all have power and they will resist anything that threatens that power. So you start small. You show them a different way works. You be the change. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, but neither is what we just survived. They stood in silence watching the stars. After a while, Commander Torvin found them. He looked uncomfortable seeing them together, but he bowed respectfully. My queen, I must prepare you for what awaits on the homeworld. General Vrax has consolidated significant support. He controls 3 of the 9 fleets and has the backing of House Dravak and House Kelton. Your return will be contested. Let him contest it, Sakara said coldly. I am the rightful queen. My bloodline is unbroken for 300 generations. He is a general who forgot his place. Yes, my queen. But he has made accusations. He claims you were corrupted by human influence, that you have become weak and unfit to rule. Your prolonged time with the human will be used as evidence. Then let them see the truth. Let them judge for themselves. Torvin glanced at Daniel. Perhaps it would be wiser to leave the human aboard the ship when we land. His presence will only inflame the situation. No, Sakara said firmly. Daniel comes with me. He will be honored as the ally who saved my life. Any who object can face my blade personally. Torvin looked like he wanted to argue, but he simply bowed. As you command. Over the next 3 days, Daniel learned more about Zavari culture. He studied their history through the ship's database, learning about the centuries of warfare and conquest that built the empire. It was a brutal history, one built on strength and dominance, but he also saw moments of surprising beauty, poetry, art, philosophy. The Zavari were not just warriors. They were a complex people trapped in a culture that only valued one aspect of themselves. Sakara spent most of her time in strategy sessions with Torvin and other commanders, preparing for the confrontation with Vrax. But each evening, she found Daniel on the observation deck and they would talk. About everything and nothing. About their hopes and fears. About what might happen when they reached the homeworld. I am afraid, Sakara admitted one night. Not of battle, not of death, but of failing my people, of not being strong enough to change what needs changing. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Daniel said. And not because you can fight. Because you're willing to question everything you were taught. That takes real courage. Or real foolishness. Maybe they're the same thing sometimes. On the 3rd day, the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the observation window, Daniel saw the Zavari homeworld for the first time. It was beautiful. 3 suns cast different colored light across the planet's surface, creating strange and wonderful patterns. Massive orbital stations surrounded it, bristling with weapons, the heart of an empire. We will land in 2 hours, Torvin informed them. The High Council has been informed of your return. They are convening an emergency session. General Vrax will be there, along with his supporters and yours. It will be a trial by combat or by words. Perhaps both. Then we prepare for both, Sakara said. She looked at Daniel. You do not have to come. You could stay on the ship, be returned to your people safely. No one would question your honor. I'm coming with you. It will be dangerous. The council chamber will be filled with those who want me dead, and those who want you dead simply for being human. I've been in danger before, and you'll be there. I trust you. Something flickered in Sakara's eyes. You should not trust so easily. Maybe, but I do anyway. The ship descended through the atmosphere. Daniel watched as cities appeared below, vast and glittering. The capital, Drakara, rose from the desert exactly as Sakara had described it. Black glass towers reached for the sky like claws. They landed at the royal spaceport. A honor guard waited, along with representatives from the High Council. Daniel noticed they were all heavily armed. This was not a welcome. It was a confrontation. Sakara stood tall as the ship's ramp lowered. She had donned her royal armor, the massive exoskeleton that made her look even more imposing. But before she walked down the ramp, she turned to Daniel. General Vrax stood motionless on the platform, his red scales gleaming under the chamber's harsh lights. Around them, the assembled nobles and commanders held their breath. A challenge had been issued. To refuse would mean admitting weakness. To accept might mean death. When the last piece fell away, Sakara stood in simple clothing beneath. No armor, no protection, no symbol of power. Just herself, vulnerable and real. "I am Sakara," she said quietly, but her voice still carried. "I am your queen, yes. But I am also a person. A person who has been alone her entire life because that is what tradition demanded. A person who has never known friendship because showing trust was considered weakness. A person who has never been allowed to cry, to fear, to hope, to feel anything except cold duty." She turned slowly, letting everyone see her without the armor. "For 12 days I was stranded with Sergeant Hayes. We had nothing but each other. No protocol, no tradition, no roles to play. And in that time I learned something our ancestors forgot. Being strong does not mean being empty. Being a leader does not mean being alone. Caring for others does not make you weak. It makes you stronger." "This is madness," Vrax interrupted. "You speak like a human, not a Zavari." "Perhaps that is exactly what we need," Sakara replied. "Look at our empire. We are strong, yes. We have conquered worlds. But we are also brittle. Our society cracks at the smallest pressure because we have forgotten how to bend. We fight among ourselves because we have forgotten how to trust. We rule through fear because we have forgotten how to inspire." She looked around the chamber. "Humanity is young. Their technology is inferior. By every measure they should be weak. But they are not. They adapt. They cooperate. They form bonds that make them stronger together than they could ever be alone. That is why General Vrax and his rebels feared peace with them. Not because humans threaten us with weapons, but because they threaten us with ideas, with the possibility that there is another way." Daniel watched from the side of the chamber. He wanted to help, to speak, but this was Sakara's moment. She had to do this herself. The pale blue council member leaned forward. "You ask us to abandon centuries of tradition, to embrace weakness in the name of strength. Why should we believe this will not destroy us?" "Because I'm living proof," Sakara said. "I was taught that showing vulnerability meant death. That trust was foolishness. That emotion was poison. But when I was wounded and alone, Sergeant Hayes could have left me to die. Instead, he saved me, not because I commanded it, not because he feared me, but because he chose to. Because humans understand something we have forgotten, that the strongest bonds are those given freely, not taken by force." She walked toward where Daniel stood. "Come here, Daniel Hayes." Daniel hesitated, then walked onto the platform. Hundreds of hostile eyes fixed on him. He had never felt more exposed in his life. "Tell them," Sakara said. "Tell them what you told me on that moon, about strength and vulnerability." Daniel swallowed hard. His mouth was dry. He had trained for combat, not public speaking. But Sakara was looking at him with those golden eyes, trusting him. He couldn't let her down. "I'm just a soldier," he began, his voice rough. "I don't know much about politics or empires, but I know about my unit, about the people I serve with. We trust each other with our lives. Not because we're ordered to, but because we've seen each other at our worst and still choose to stand together." He looked around the chamber. "You think showing fear or pain is weakness, but the strongest people I know are the ones who can admit when they're scared and still do what needs to be done. My commander, Captain Lisa North, she cries sometimes, after we lose people after hard missions, but that doesn't make her weak. It makes her human. It makes us trust her more because we know she actually cares about us." "A commander who cries?" Vrax laughed mockingly. "How does such weakness inspire anyone to fight?" "Because we fight for her," Daniel said simply. "We fight because we know she values our lives. We fight because we trust that she'll only risk us when it truly matters. Your soldiers fight because they fear punishment if they don't. Our soldiers fight because they believe in something worth protecting." The chamber was silent. Daniel continued, his voice growing stronger. "Queen Sakara saved my life when she could have left me. She tended my wounds when she was injured herself. She stayed with me through a fever that could have killed me, even though it meant putting herself at risk. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength that builds loyalty you can't force." Vrax's expression darkened. "Enough of this human sentiment. The council must vote." "Wait," the pale blue council member said. "I would hear more. You speak of trust and loyalty. But what of discipline? What of order? Without strict hierarchy, how can an empire function?" "You can have discipline without cruelty," Daniel answered. "You can have order without fear. My people aren't perfect. We make mistakes. But we've learned that the best teams are the ones where everyone feels valued, where different ideas are welcomed, where leaders listen as well as command. Another council member spoke, an elderly Zavari with silver scales. And what of our traditions? You would have us abandon everything our ancestors built? Not abandon, Sakara interjected. Evolve, keep what makes us strong. Honor, courage, excellence in all things, but let go of what holds us back. The isolation, the fear of appearing weak, the idea that caring is corruption. She moved to the center of the platform, standing beside Daniel. I propose an alliance with humanity. Not because we need their technology or their territory, but because we need their perspective. They can teach us what we have forgotten, and we can teach them what they have yet to learn. Together we become stronger than either species could be alone. And what of your relationship with this human? Vrax demanded. You call him friend. You touch him freely. You remove your armor before him. This is inappropriate for a queen. Why? Sakara challenged. Because tradition says so? Because showing trust is dangerous? I have lived 32 years following every rule, meeting every expectation, being the perfect queen. And I have been miserable, alone, empty. I refuse to live that way anymore. She turned to face the council directly. I am your queen. I will lead you with strength and wisdom. I will fight our enemies and protect our people, but I will also have friends. I will show emotion when I feel it. I will trust those who earn it. And I will build an empire where strength and compassion can coexist. If you cannot accept that, then remove me. But know this, I will not return to being a statue. I choose to be alive. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted for and against. Vrax roared for order, but the chaos only grew. The council members on their high thrones conferred among themselves, their voices lost in the noise. Finally, the elderly silver-scaled council member raised his hand. The chamber slowly quieted. I am Lord Tarkus of House Velen, he announced. I have served 6 queens in my long life. I have seen the strong and the weak, the wise and the foolish, and I tell you now, Queen Sakara speaks truth. The chamber fell completely silent. We have built an empire on strength, Tarkus continued, but we have mistaken hardness for strength. A blade that cannot bend will shatter. A ruler who cannot feel will lose touch with those they rule. Our ancestors may have needed the old ways to survive. But survival alone is not enough. We must also live. He stood from his throne, a gesture of deep significance. I vote that Queen Sakara remains fit to rule. More, I vote that she is the leader we need for the age we face. The galaxy is changing. We must change with it or be left behind. Another council member stood, then another. 5 of the 9 council members rose, declaring their support for Sakara. The vote was decided. Vrax's face twisted with rage. This is betrayal. You choose emotion over strength. The Empire will fall because of this weakness. The Empire will fall if we cannot adapt, Sakara replied calmly. You fear change, General. That is your weakness, not mine. Then I challenge you, Vrax roared. Right here, right now. Prove your strength or admit I am right. Sakara looked at him coldly. I have nothing to prove to you. You are removed from command, effective immediately. You will face trial for your role in the attack on Unity Station. I will not be taken. Vrax drew his energy blade. His supporters in the chamber rose, weapons appearing. Stand down, Commander Torvin's voice boomed. Royal guards flooded into the chamber, weapons raised. They outnumbered Vrax's loyalists 3-1. For a moment, it could have gone either way. Violence or surrender. Then Vrax saw the odds and slowly lowered his blade. This is not over, he said darkly. Yes, it is, Sakara replied. Take him away. The guards secured Vrax and his supporters. The chamber began to empty, nobles and commanders filing out in stunned silence. They had witnessed something unprecedented. A queen who removed her armor, who showed emotion, who called a human friend. The Empire would never be the same. When the chamber was finally empty except for a few guards and advisors, Sakara allowed herself to breathe. Her shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of the confrontation finally showing. Daniel approached carefully. You did it. We did it, she corrected. Your words mattered, Daniel. They saw a human speak with honor and courage. That changed minds. What happens now? Now I must rebuild, consolidate support, begin the difficult work of... The formal ceremony was scheduled for the next day. Sakara would address the entire empire through broadcast channels. officially announcing her survival and the new direction for Zavari society. Daniel was supposed to stand beside her, representing humanity. But as the night wore on, doubt crept into his mind. He stood on a balcony in the guest quarters Sakara had given him, overlooking the glittering city below. Drakara was beautiful at night, all those lights representing millions of lives that would be affected by what happened tomorrow. "You are troubled," Sakara's voice came from behind him. Daniel turned. She had entered quietly, wearing simple robes instead of armor. She looked more approachable this way, more like the person he had met on that moon. "Just thinking," he said. About tomorrow. About whether I should really be up there with you. I'm nobody, Sakara. Just a sergeant who got caught up in something way bigger than himself. Maybe it would be better if you did this alone. Made it about Zavari changing themselves, not about human influence. Sakara moved to stand beside him at the balcony rail. "Do you want to know something?" "I am terrified." Daniel looked at her in surprise. You faced down Vrax and half the council without blinking. That was easy. They are the known. The expected. Tomorrow I speak to billions. I ask them to question everything they have ever believed. To trust me when I tell them that weakness can be strength. That isolation is not safety, that there is another way. She gripped the rail tightly. "What if I am wrong? What if this destroys us?" "You're not wrong." "How can you be certain?" "Because I've seen it work. Back home we've got hundreds of different nations, thousands of cultures, billions of people who all think differently. And yeah, we fight sometimes. We disagree. We make mistakes. But we also create amazing things when we work together. We solve problems no one could solve alone. We make each other better." Sakura was quiet for a moment. "Your certainty is comforting. I wish I shared it. You don't need certainty. You just need courage. And you've got plenty of that." "Do I? Sometimes I wonder if courage is just fear moving forward anyway." "That's exactly what it is." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city. After a while, Sakara spoke again. "Tell me honestly, Daniel. When you first saw me on that station, what did you think? I thought you were terrifying. All those scales and armor and that cold stare. I thought you were going to start a war just by showing up. And now? Now I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. And a good friend." Sakara's eyes glistened. "Friend, I never thought I would have one. Do you know what the Zavari word for friend is?" "We do not have one. We have ally, subordinate, superior, mate, but no word for someone who knows you and chooses to stay anyway. Maybe you need a new word then." "Perhaps we do." She turned to face him fully. "Daniel, tomorrow when I speak, I am going to tell them everything. About the moon. About my fear and pain. About learning from you. About choosing to be vulnerable. It will be uncomfortable. Many will reject it. Some may even try to kill me for it. But I must do this. I must show them it is possible to be both strong and real. I'll be right there with you." "No," Sakara said firmly. "You will be in the audience. Not on the platform, but this must be my choice, Daniel. If you stand beside me, they will always wonder if you influenced me, if I am your puppet. But if I stand alone and speak these truths, they will know it comes from my heart, from my own journey." She smiled slightly. "You have already done your part. You showed me the path. Now I must walk it myself." Daniel wanted to argue, but he understood. This was her moment. Her transformation. He could support her, but he couldn't do it for her. "Okay," he said, "but I'll be there. Front row. And if anyone tries anything, I'm jumping on that platform. Ever the protector. Someone's got to keep you safe." Sakara laughed. A real laugh that sounded nothing like the cold queen he had first met. "I have an entire army for that." "Yeah, but I'm better." They talked late into the night about everything and nothing. About Daniel's plans to return to Earth. About Sakara's hopes for the Empire. About the alliance between their peoples. When Daniel finally returned to his quarters, he felt lighter. Tomorrow would be difficult, but they were ready. Morning came with golden sunlight streaming through the windows. Daniel dressed in his dress uniform, the one that had been cleaned and repaired. He looked at himself in the mirror. Just a soldier from Ohio, about to witness history. The ceremony was held in the Great Plaza, a massive open space that could hold hundreds of thousands. Holographic displays would carry Sakara's image across the entire empire. Billions would watch. The weight of that number was crushing. Daniel took his seat in the front section, reserved for honored guests and dignitaries. Around him sat Zavari nobles, commanders, and officials. They all stared at him with varying degrees of curiosity and hostility. He was used to it by now. The plaza filled rapidly. The crowd was enormous, a sea of scaled faces in gleaming armor. Some carried signs supporting their queen. Others looked uncertain. Change was frightening, even necessary change. Commander Torvin approached the platform first, calling for attention. The crowd quieted. Then Sakara appeared. She wore full royal armor, the traditional ceremonial kind that made her look 10 feet tall. The crowd roared approval. Their queen, strong and powerful, exactly as she should be. Sakara raised one hand and silence fell. "My people," she began, her voice amplified to reach every corner of the plaza. "I stand before you today as your queen, but also as something I have never been allowed to be. As myself," the crowd murmured, confused. What did she mean? "Many of you have heard rumors about my time on the moon called Varus, about the human soldier who was with me, about changes I wish to make. Today I tell you the truth of what happened. All of it," she began to speak. She told them about the attack on Unity Station, about the rebels who tried to kill her and blame humanity. She told them about crashing on Varus, about Daniel saving her life, about the struggle to survive. She told them about her fear, her pain, her uncertainty. The crowd grew restless. Queens did not speak of fear. Queens did not admit to pain. What was she doing? Then Sakara did something unprecedented. She began removing her armor. Right there, in front of hundreds of thousands of her subjects and billions watching across the empire. Piece by piece, the ceremonial armor came off. The crowd gasped. Some shouted in anger, others in confusion. This was forbidden, unthinkable. Queens did not show vulnerability. Queens did not break protocol. Queens did not. When the last piece fell, Sakara stood in simple robes. Just herself, no armor, no enhancement, no symbol of power. And on her face, visible to everyone, were tears. The plaza fell into shocked silence. Their queen was crying, openly, publicly. It should have been shameful. It should have been weakness. But somehow, standing there vulnerable and real, she had never looked stronger. "I cry," Sakara said, her voice breaking slightly, "because I have wasted 32 years. 32 years being afraid to feel, afraid to trust, afraid to be real. I cry because I finally understand what I have missed. What we all have missed." She walked to the edge of the platform, looking out over her people. "We have built an empire on strength. We are proud of our power, our discipline, our victories, and those things have value. They have kept us safe, made us mighty, but they have also made us brittle. We do not bend, so we break. We do not trust, so we stand alone. We do not love, so we have nothing truly worth fighting for. This human, Sergeant Daniel Hayes, taught me something revolutionary, not with weapons or technology, but with simple kindness. He showed me that caring for others is not weakness, that admitting fear does not make you a coward, that being vulnerable with those you trust is the ultimate strength." She gestured toward where Daniel sat. "Stand, Sergeant Hayes." Daniel stood, feeling every eye in the plaza fix on him. His heart pounded. "This human saved my life multiple times," Sakara continued. "Not because I commanded it. Not because he feared punishment. But because he chose to. Because he saw me not as a queen or an alien or an enemy, but as a person who needed help. And that choice changed everything." She turned back to the crowd. "I know many of you are afraid. You think these ideas will weaken us, that showing emotion will make us targets, that caring will distract us from duty. I understand that fear because I felt it too. But I was wrong. And so are you. The strongest military unit is not the one that fears its commander, but the one that trusts them. The best leader is not the one who never fails, but the one who learns from failure. The mightiest empire is not the one that crushes all opposition, but the one that can adapt and grow and change when necessary." Her voice grew stronger. "I propose a new Zavari empire, one that keeps our strength but adds compassion, one that values honor but also understands mercy, one where leaders can admit mistakes without losing respect, where warriors can cry for fallen comrades without shame, where queens can have friends. This will not be easy. Change never is. Many of you will resist. Some will hate me for suggesting it. But I am your queen, and this is my command. We will evolve. We will learn. We will become stronger by becoming more complete." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Those who cannot accept this may leave the empire with honor. No punishment, no shame. Find a colony,